in May and June 1935, Deacon Hardin Show and Grace Arch and I were part of the 95 people that were baptized in this church. So we have come a long ways. Now, a lot of you were in here during the time I was here. Now, I say before 35. I don't know but one deacon on the board now that was here before 35, and that's Deacon Munn, and he wasn't a deacon. Now, Frazier, Long, and all, I taught in Sunday school. So you know they were on the deacon board. Right. So I'm just talking about the history. Now, my relationship with this church goes back from a little kid under 5. My mother brought me here under Reverend Anthony. Then under Reverend Dudley. Then I left for a couple of years and went to my father's church in Mount Olivet, which was at stop 5. Then I went to number 12. And during that time I met Deacon Jason. Is he here? And remember, his father was a deacon of Mount Olivet Church, and he and I were in Sunday school together in Mount Olivet. So you see, our history go back a long time. Now, what I want to say is that there are some things that history books do not write. You see, history is about not only about facts, but about people. Did you not know that the youngest superintendent in the Sunday school at this church was Deacon Hardin Shaw? He was superintendent of this Sunday school at the age of 18. In fact, he hadn't got quite 18. In 1938-39. And I was his assistant superintendent. In 1939 and 1940, I was the superintendent. Pearline Chavers in Detroit. Now, Lily Bell's sister was the secretary. Henrietta Seals, who's in the nursing home, was the assistant superintendent to me and secretary to Hardin. As a little boy, we didn't have full-time janitor in churches, and therefore this church was not always clean. And I recall vividly one Saturday morning getting up early, me and my dog, and came down here and worked all day long. My mother didn't know where I was. And I cleaned this church from top to bottom. So much so that when people came to church this Sunday, they want to know who cleaned the church. And I never did tell them who did it. Only my mother and Miss Ella Fleming, the late Ella Fleming, my next door neighbor, knew that I had come out and done that. Now I said all that to let you know that I am a long part of this history. I also want you to know that the first junior usher board of boys was organized by Walter Stovall in 1935, when Hardin Shaw and I were the first ushers on the junior usher board. So time goes back. I taught the Sunday school class we used to call the Sunshine, right after I got baptized. And I taught until 1939. And then in 40 I did not. And then 41 I came back and taught until 47. Taught the men Bible class and the young people class. And I used to build up classes so, and every time I build a class every year, they would promote people and take all my students. And then I had to go out and start again. And so later on in life, at that time I used to be angry. But later on in life, I learned that God moves in mysterious ways. There are some people that can do certain things. And Harold Lockett and James Long knows that on Saturday nights, as they walk down Hull Street, that used to be the main thoroughfares on Saturday night. I was staying on the corner between 15th and 16th. And as I see the young people come by, I see you in Sunday school in the morning. And that's how I kept my class. And so we have come a long ways. Not only was I a junior usher, but I was a member of the men usher board and got to be the president. And the usher union of Southside I have organized in 1943. Late brother Everett Perry and myself, the Southside Usher Union. Then as a young boy, I was a part of the interdenomination Bible class that met from home to home on Friday nights. Brother Chandler from Mount Zion Church was the main teacher. Brother Whitfield, cousin of First Baptist, and Brother Giles, that I was not a preacher then. I was a teacher. And so I have come and shared a long time in the history of this church and this community. And I wish to say that when I saw your theme today, investing in the future, and I saw your action of presenting the scholarship, I thank God. Because when I came along, education was not mentioned, right, Ms. Jacobs, in this church. And when I started preaching and was in school struggling, nobody thought about helping me until Sister Osborne and Sister Rosa Irvin White, through the Fountain Club, had a program one Sunday night so they could raise some money to help me in school. Now, there are a lot of folks in this church. None of us get where we are without somebody helping us. And I think about the first speech I made in this church. Adam May Stovall wrote that speech for me as we welcome the teachers from Dawn, as the ushers celebrate their first anniversary, and I was to give the welcome address. And she wrote that thing, and I had that thing from memory. And I stood up that night, and the church was packed, and I forgot everything on that paper. But I made my own speech. And from that day on, nobody had to write anything for me. But then when I look back, and when I think about churches now, you get tired quick. I know on the third Sunday evening, we used to have communion. You come here at 3 o'clock and didn't know when you was going home. And I know when the communion was so packed that people would be up in the balcony, brother Pastor. There was a time in Zion when they had put extra streetcars on the line for to bring the people from all over Richmond over here on third Sunday. This was the big church. And you talking about revival, y'all have revival 1 week and get tired. And I noticed they're cutting some of them to 3 and 4 nights. But when I came along here, revival was a whole month. We had cottage prayer meeting a week. Then we had prayer meeting in the church a week. Then we had a revival for a month. We started at Union Baptist. We went to Swanburg Baptist, and the last 2 weeks at Zion Baptist. So we have come a long ways. Now, I didn't want to bore you, but I did want to share some of those things with you. There's so much more, but God knows I have enjoyed being a part. In 1939, the Sunday school teachers were organized by me. You know, when you go teach Sunday school, everybody teaching a whole lot of different things. So we decided that the best way to do it is let's all be wrong, all be right. So we met every Tuesday night from home to home, and each teacher had to teach the lesson from one teacher to the other until we went around. And then we moved it here to the church, and we had our teacher meeting and left the teacher meeting and went to prayer meeting. And that's where I got my start when I think about digging Milton Jones. Now, the Lord hadn't called me to preach, but Milton Jones would always get me to say something before that prayer meeting ended. And I think about him, and as I stand here now, I could think about seeing him, sitting here, looking back to the preacher. And I think about Gary Foster. And I think about Eugene Sledge, who helped me. and my Sunday school teacher, and Walter Stovall. Those are the people, and many more in this church, that really had influence on my life and helped to guide me where I am. And I do not ever forget, I stood there when they honored me for 30 years as pastor last April. I stood before that packed congregation at the banquet, and I told them some things about myself. I didn't come from a big family. I didn't come from an educated family. My mother couldn't read and write. But my mother told me, as long as you want to go to school and behave yourself, you can go. And I went till I finished. When I think about all the background, every once in a while I get in my car and I go all out Hickory Hill and go out to the cemetery and think about all those folks that I used to know. And I think it also helped me to keep my feet on the ground, because so often we get up and we forget where we came from. But I constantly come over. Now, Hardin and I have been friends about 60-some years. And right now, we're just as close now as we were then. I'm always over South Side. Every once in a while, I read about somebody dead over here in this church. Even when I don't get a call, I ease in here if my time allows me, because I always want to be identified with those people like Lorene Sittenall who funeral the other day, and Hayward, who funeral yesterday. So I taught him in Sunday school. Those are people who helped make the history of this church. And so we are where we are because God has been good to you. And the people didn't mind praising the Lord. We didn't take up much money, Brother Pettis. And we didn't have much education. But we had a shouting time in Zion. There was something about the spirit of Zion that was nowhere else. And so I want you to get education. I'm glad the Lord bless you to have the resources to do the things you need to do. But don't ever forget that it was God that brought you where you are. Not just a word from the Lord.